Some houses are more than walls and a roof. They're stitched together with every memory, every laugh, every fight, every smell of Sunday dinners and Christmas mornings. For me, that house was the heartbeat of my childhood and the last piece of my parents I had left. It was modest, a two-story with peeling paint on the shutters and a yard that was never quite as tidy as Mom wanted it. But every corner of that house told a story. The nick in the banister from when Daniel shoved me during a race up the stairs. The dent in the garage door from Dad backing out too fast one morning. The old wallpaper in the dining room that Mom swore she'd change but never did. When my parents passed within a year of each other, grief didn't just gut me, it hollowed me out. Losing them felt like losing the ground beneath my feet. But through it all, the house was still there. Solid. Standing. A reminder that they had been real, that their love had shaped something permanent. So when the lawyer read the will and explained that the house was left to both me and my brother Daniel, split evenly, I felt relief. It wasn't about ownership or money. It was about legacy, about keeping their memory alive. After the funeral, Daniel and I sat in that same kitchen where Mom had baked pies every Thanksgiving. We were quiet for a long time, just listening to the silence that felt too loud without her humming in the background. Finally, Daniel broke it. "Don't worry," he said, his voice low, steady. "We'll take care of this place. Together. Just like they wanted." I nodded, feeling tears sting my eyes. That's what they'd want. Keeping the family. No matter what. He reached across the table, placed a hand on my shoulder. "We're brothers. Nothing comes between that." And I believed him. Let me pause here. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, so completely, that the thought of betrayal never even crossed your mind? That's where I was sitting that day. I believed Daniel's promise as firmly as I believed the sun would rise the next morning. If you've ever given someone your trust, only to find out later they didn't deserve it, then you already know where this story is heading. And before I go any further, let me thank you. If you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe, like this video, and share your story in the comments. If you've been with me for a while, you're the reason I keep telling these tales. Now, back to Daniel. In the weeks that followed, we started the long, painful process of sorting through our parents' things. Old clothes, worn furniture, stacks of photos. Some days it felt like I was drowning in memories. I'd pull out Dad's toolbox and remember the sound of his voice teaching me how to fix a leaky pipe. I'd find one of Mom's cookbooks and smell her Sunday roast, thick with rosemary and garlic. Daniel helped, though not with the same care. He was faster, less sentimental. While I lingered over photo albums, he tossed things into boxes without looking twice. "Do we really need to keep all this junk?" he asked once, holding up a cracked teacup Mom had cherished. "It's not junk," I snapped. "She loved that." He rolled his eyes. "Fine. Keep it. But we can't hold on to everything, Tom. Life goes on." I told myself it was just his way of coping. He had always been more practical, less emotional. Where I saw memories, he saw clutter. I didn't fault him for it. But every so often, I caught a flicker in his eyes, something cold, calculating. It unsettled me, but I brushed it aside. After all, this was my brother. The boy I'd shared bunk beds with. The man I'd stood beside at his wedding. Surely he wouldn't betray me. Surely. As the weeks stretched on, I started talking about the future of the house. "We could fix the porch come spring," I suggested one afternoon as we packed up Dad's books. "Maybe repaint the shutters." "Yeah," Daniel muttered, barely looking up. "And I was thinking we should do Christmas here. Keep Mom's tradition alive." He sighed. "I don't know, Tom. That's a lot of work." "It's what she'd want," I said firmly. He gave me a tight smile. "We'll see." 2 small words. But something in his tone sent a shiver through me. Still, I clung to his promise. The promise he'd made that day in the kitchen. "We'll take care of this place. Together." I had no idea that beneath those words, cracks were already forming. Cracks that would split wide open and swallow everything whole. Because while I was clinging to memories, Daniel was already planning something else. Something that would cut deeper than I thought possible. Grief doesn't come in one clean wave. It seeps in quietly, then crashes over you when you least expect it. That first winter without our parents was heavy. Every holiday tradition felt hollow. Every room in the house echoed with their absence. Daniel and I tried to fill the silence with work. Sorting boxes, donating clothes, cleaning out the garage. On the surface, we were united. Two sons honoring their parents' memory by taking care of the home they'd built. But beneath that surface, tension was already forming. It started small. One Saturday morning, I was in the kitchen wrapping dishes in newspaper when I heard Daniel sigh. He was standing in the living room, looking at the old sofa Mom had insisted on keeping even when it sagged in the middle. "This thing's junk," he muttered. "We should just toss it." I looked up sharply. That's the couch they bought when they first moved here. They spent their first Christmas sitting on that couch. He shrugged. "And now it's a lump of springs and fabric nobody wants." Times change. I bit my tongue, but something in me bristled. To me, every object was a memory. To him, they were just things taking up space. Another time, we were going through Dad's garage. His tools were lined neatly on the wall. Wrenches, hammers, screwdrivers, each one polished with years of use. I picked up the old drill, remembering how Dad had taught me to fix the porch railing with it when I was 12. "I'll take these," I said softly, more to myself than to Daniel. Daniel frowned. "Why? You've already got tools at home." "Because they were his," I snapped. He rolled his eyes. "You don't have to turn everything into a shrine, Tom." That word, shrine, hit me like a slap. I dropped the drill back onto the workbench and glared at him. "This isn't a shrine. It's respect." We didn't speak for the rest of the day. I told myself these were just differences in grieving. Daniel was practical, detached. I was sentimental, holding on to pieces of the past. It didn't mean he didn't care. It didn't mean he'd betray me. But as the weeks turned into months, the cracks grew deeper. Whenever I suggested repairs, patching the leaky faucet, repainting the shutters, mowing the lawn, Daniel brushed me off. "Why bother?" he'd say. "The place is falling apart." I'd argue. "That's exactly why we need to fix it, to keep it standing." But his eyes would glaze over, and I'd feel like I was talking to a stranger. One night, I suggested we host Easter at the house. "It'll be good for the family. Mom would want us to gather here." Daniel gave me a long look, then shook his head. "I don't think that's a good idea. We should just move on. Move on." Those words lingered in my head long after he left. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he acted. He stopped showing up as often. Where I visited the house weekly, making sure the pipes didn't freeze or the roof didn't leak, Daniel would go weeks without setting foot inside. When I asked, he always had an excuse. Work, the kids, his health. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about time, it was about choice. He didn't want to be there. I brushed it off. Told myself he just grieved differently, that he was avoiding pain, not responsibility. But late at night, lying awake, I wondered, why does it feel like I'm the only one who cares about keeping this place alive? The last straw of that season came one afternoon when I stopped by the house unexpectedly. I thought I'd beat Daniel there, maybe surprise him with coffee. But when I walked in, I heard voices from the kitchen. Daniel was at the table with a man I didn't recognize. Papers spread between them. When they saw me, both froze. The stranger quickly gathered the documents into a folder and stood. "Sorry, I was just leaving," he mumbled, slipping past me. I stared at Daniel. Who was that? He avoided my eyes. Just a guy from work. Nothing important. I glanced at the folder. Legal papers, I thought. They didn't look like lunch notes. Didn't look like nothing, I said carefully. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Tom, don't start. It's personal business." I wanted to push, but something in his voice stopped me. A sharpness I'd never heard from him before. So I let it go, for the moment. But as I drove home, my stomach twisted. Why would he be meeting with strangers at the house? Why hide the papers? Why lie? I wanted to believe it was nothing. But deep down, I felt the first sting of something darker. The bond one thought was unbreakable. The bond of blood, of brothers, was beginning to fracture. And I didn't even realize how close it was to shattering completely. Trust doesn't vanish all at once. It erodes like a cliff battered by waves. One day it looks solid. The next you realize the foundation's been crumbling for years. That's what my relationship with Daniel started to feel like in the months after our parents passed. At first, I tried to ignore it. The distance, the excuses, the way he avoided my calls or kept conversations short. But it became harder to brush aside as the weeks went by. I'd stop by the house to mow the lawn or check the pipes, and I'd find mail stuffed in the box with his name on it. Utility bills, property tax notices, paperwork he should have handled but hadn't. I'd call him. Dan, you need to take care of this stuff. Yeah, I'll get to it, he'd say. But he rarely did. It was as though he'd already detached himself from the house, like it wasn't his responsibility anymore. One afternoon, I suggested we repaint the shutters. They were peeling badly, and every time I looked at them, I heard Mom's voice nagging Dad. One day, Frank, those shutters are going to fall off if you don't fix them. Daniel frowned. Why waste money on paint? It's not like we're living there. I bristled. Because it's our parents' house. Their home. We should take care of it. He shrugged. Feels like throwing good money after bad. That phrase stuck with me. Throwing good money after bad. As if preserving the house wasn't worth it. As if keeping in the family was a burden, not an honor. But I told myself he was just being pragmatic. Maybe he didn't see things the way I did. Not everyone gets sentimental about bricks and wood. Still, a knot began forming in my gut. The knot tightened the next time I caught him at the house with strangers. It was a Sunday morning. I'd stopped by early with coffee, figuring we could get some work done before the heat of the day. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw Daniel's car already there, and two other cars parked beside it. I walked in through the back door and froze. Daniel was at the table again, with two men in suits. More folders. More papers. They looked up like kids caught sneaking cookies. Daniel shot me a sharp look. Tom, you should have called first. I set the coffees down on the counter, my heart pounding. What's going on? One of the men stood quickly, closing his folder. We'll be in touch, he said, then brushed past me without making eye contact. The other followed close behind. I turned to Daniel. Who are they? He rubbed his temple. Just some people I know. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I snapped. They were in our parents' house, Dan. At our table. With papers you won't let me see. What the hell is going on? He slammed his fist on the table. I said it's personal business. Drop it. The anger in his voice startled me into silence. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out, leaving me standing in the kitchen, staring at the chair where Mom used to sit and sip her morning coffee. Personal business. In our house. I drove home that day with a pit in my stomach that wouldn't go away. My wife noticed immediately. What's wrong? She asked as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. It's Daniel, I muttered. He's hiding something, meeting people at the house, keeping papers from me. She frowned. Do you think it has to do with the property? I hesitated. The thought had crossed my mind, but I hadn't let myself believe it. I don't know, but why else would he be meeting strangers there? Why keep me out of the loop? She put her hand over mine. You need to be careful. Don't let him push you aside. Watch him. I nodded, but my chest ached with a different pain, the realization that I couldn't trust my own brother anymore. The final straw came a week later. I drove by the county office to drop off some paperwork for my job, and on a whim, I checked the property tax records for the house. When the clerk pulled up the file, I leaned over the counter, and my stomach dropped. Daniel's name was listed as the sole point of contact. Not both of ours, just his. Are you sure that's right? I asked the clerk, my voice tight. He nodded. That's what it says here. I walked out of the office shaking. My parents had left the house to both of us, equally. But somehow, Daniel had managed to push me out of the paperwork. I wanted to call him right then. Scream. Demand an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I drove to the house. Stood on the porch. Ran my hand along the peeling shutters. Listened to the silence inside. And for the first time, I let myself admit what I'd been denying all along. Daniel wasn't just distant. He wasn't just grieving differently. He was hiding something. And whatever it was going to break the bond between us wide open. Some truths don't whisper. They don't creep in slowly. They slam into you like a hammer, leaving you stunned, breathless, unable to comprehend the weight of what you've just learned. That's how the truth about Daniel hit me. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I stopped by the hardware store to pick up supplies for the leaky faucet in the old house. While I stood in line, flipping through a clearance bin, I heard a familiar voice. Tom? Hey, how are you holding up? It was Cheryl, a realtor I'd known for years. She'd been a family friend, the kind who sent Christmas cards and remembered everyone's birthdays. I gave her a weary smile. Doing okay. Just trying to keep the house together, you know? Her smile faltered. Oh, I thought you knew. Daniel said the sale went through last month. The words didn't make sense. Sale? What sale? I blinked. What do you mean? She hesitated, realizing she'd stepped into something messy. The house. Your parents' place. Daniel came in with all the paperwork. Said you both agreed to sell. It closed about 4 weeks ago. For a moment, the air left my lungs. My ears rang. The room tilted around me. No, I said finally, my voice hollow. That's not possible. But Cheryl's face told me otherwise. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't realize you weren't in on it. I left the store in a fog, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I drove straight to the county office, heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. The clerk pulled the records quickly, not knowing he was about to shatter what was left of my trust. And there it was, a certified deed transfer. Daniel's signature scrawled across the bottom. The house listed as sold, paid in full. But where my name should have been, where our names should have been together, there was nothing. I stared at the document, ball rising in my throat. The house wasn't ours anymore. The chipped banister, the creaking floorboards, the kitchen that smelled like coffee every morning for 30 years. All of it was gone. Not to time, not to fate, not to death, but to Daniel, to my brother. I sat in my truck outside the office for what felt like hours, my head in my hands. I thought of Mom, standing at the stove with her apron on, humming while she cooked. I thought of Dad, polishing his tools in the garage. I thought of the promise Daniel had made me after the funeral. We'll take care of this place. Together. Just like they wanted. And I realized it had been a lie. From the very start. The pain cut deeper than I thought possible. Not because I'd lost the house, though that was devastating enough, but because of who had taken it from me. My own brother. The boy I'd shared bunk beds with. The man I'd stood beside at his wedding. The one person I thought I could trust without question. And he'd stolen from me. Lied to me. Betrayed not just me, but our parents' memory. That night, I couldn't hold back any longer. I called him. He answered on the third ring, his tone casual. Hey, Tom. What's up? What's up? My voice shook with rage. You sold the house, Daniel. Without me. Behind my back. Silence. Then a sigh. You weren't supposed to find out like this. Find out. I exploded. It was ours. Ours. And you went behind me. Forged it like I didn't exist. His tone hardened. Look, Tom. The place was falling apart. It was too much work. I handled it. You handled it. I spat. You stole it. You lied to me. To everyone. I needed the money, he said flatly. You'll be fine. You've got your savings, your job. I had debts. Family helps family. My hand trembled as I gripped the phone. Family doesn't do this, Daniel. Family doesn't sell their parents' legacy behind their brother's back. He exhaled sharply. You wouldn't have agreed. You're too sentimental. Someone had to make the tough call. That someone was me. I wanted to scream, to drive to his house and pound on his door until he looked me in the eye. But I didn't, because right then I understood something. Yelling wouldn't change what he'd done. Confronting him in private wouldn't bring the house back. But exposing him, revealing his lies in front of the whole family he thought he could fool, that would cut deeper than anything else. And I knew exactly where to do it. The family reunion was coming up. The first one since Mom passed. The one Daniel always used to host with his chest puffed out, playing the role of good son and responsible older brother. This year, I let him play that part one last time, and then I'd tear the mask off in front of everyone. The night I called Daniel about the house, I thought the rage in my chest was enough to tear me apart. But when I hung up, the anger didn't go away. It simmered, boiled, hardened into something sharper. I couldn't leave it at that. I needed to look him in the eye. So 2 days later, I drove to his house. His wife answered the door, surprise flickering across her face. "Tom, hi. I didn't know you were coming. Is Daniel home?" I asked, my voice tight. She hesitated, then nodded. "He's in the den." I walked past her before she could say anything else. My legs shook with every step, but I forced myself forward. Daniel was on the couch, beer in hand, watching a ball game. He looked up casually, like nothing was wrong. "Tom," he said with a grin. "Didn't expect you." I stopped in the doorway, staring at him. "You sold the house." His grin faltered, but only for a second. Then he shrugged, with fury. "You forged papers. You lied to the realtor. You cut me out completely. That wasn't necessity. That was greed." His eyes narrowed. "You think this is about greed? You got savings, a steady job. You're fine. I've got debts, bills, kids in college. Somebody had to make a move." I took a step closer, my fist clenching. "You think Mom and Dad would have wanted this? For you to sell their house for quick cash? For you to betray your own brother?" He leaned back on the couch, crossing his arms. "Mom and Dad are gone, Tom. The house was falling apart. It was a burden. You're the only one who couldn't see that." The words cut deep. A burden. That's what he called the house. The place where we grew up. The place where our parents lived their whole lives. The place filled with laughter and tears and memories so thick they clung to the walls. I could barely see straight. "You're unbelievable," I whispered. He smirked, the arrogance in his expression twisting my stomach. "You'll thank me one day. You always were too sentimental. Someone had to be practical." I stared at him, my blood boiling. For a moment, I wanted to lunge across the room and shake him until he admitted what he'd done. But I didn't, because something inside me had shifted. Screaming wouldn't change anything. Punching him wouldn't undo the sale. But patience? Patience could destroy him. I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "One day, Daniel, you're going to regret this. You think you've won. You think you've fooled everyone. But the truth always comes out." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Not this time, little brother. Not this time." I straightened, staring down at him one last time. His smugness burned into my memory, fueling the fire in my chest. Then I turned and walked out, leaving him in his comfortable den, surrounded by the illusion that he'd gotten away with it. But in my mind, the plan was already forming. The reunion was only weeks away. The entire family would be there. Cousins, uncles, aunts, people who'd sat around that kitchen table, eaten Mom's pies, helped Dad repair the roof. Daniel would be there too, standing tall, playing the role of the dutiful son, pretending he cared about family. And that's when I'd tear it all down. I wouldn't need fists. I wouldn't need shouting. All I'd need was the truth. And the truth was sitting in my folder at home. Certified deeds, tax records, the realtor's written statement. Proof that Daniel had betrayed not just me, but all of them. For weeks, he'd play the part. Smile, joke, pretend nothing had changed. But at the reunion, I'd pull the mask off in front of everyone. And then he'd know exactly what it felt like to lose everything. After that night in Daniel's den, I knew shouting at him wouldn't bring justice. He was too smug, too sure of himself, too convinced he'd pulled one over on me. He thought the papers were hidden, the deal sealed, and the house forgotten. But I had something he didn't. Patience. And patience, I knew, would turn his smug grin into ashes. The first step was proof. I couldn't just stand at the reunion and accuse him with nothing to back me up. He'd deny it, twist the story, paint me as the bitter younger brother who couldn't let go. Daniel had always been good at spinning lies into something believable. But paper doesn't lie. So I went back to the county office. This time, I requested certified copies of everything tied to the sale. The clerk pulled out file after file, each stamped and signed, each bearing Daniel's name. The deed transfer, the closing documents, the tax reassignment. When she slid the stack across the counter, I stared at his signature scrawled in black ink. That messy, familiar handwriting. The same signature I'd seen on birthday cards and Dad's retirement watch. Seeing it here, beneath words that cut me out of my own parents' legacy, twisted my stomach. I tucked the papers into a folder and left, my grip tight around the handle. The next step was witnesses. I called Cheryl, the realtor. My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking. "Cheryl," I said, "I need you to tell me exactly what Daniel said when he sold the house." There was a long pause. "Tom, I don't want to get in the middle." "You're not in the middle." I cut her off gently. "You're in the truth. Please, I need this." She sighed, then lowered her voice. "He told me you'd already agreed, that you didn't want the house, that you were fine letting it go. I asked if you'd sign the paperwork, but he said you'd given him permission to handle everything." My chest tightened. Permission. He'd used my trust as his cover. "Can you put that in writing?" I asked. After another pause, she agreed. "I'll email you a statement." When her message came through later that night, I printed it and slid it into the folder. Another nail in Daniel's coffin. At home, I spread the papers across the kitchen table. My wife sat across from me, her hands folded, her eyes searching mine. "You're really going to do this?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. "At the reunion." She frowned. "Tom, once you do this, there's no going back. The family will take sides. It'll get ugly. It's already ugly." I snapped and softened my tone. "He lied to all of us. He stood in that kitchen after Mom's funeral and swore we'd take care of the house together. And then he sold it for his own gain. If I keep quiet, he wins twice, once with the money and once with a lie." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand, then promised me something. "What?" "Don't lose yourself in it. Don't let anger turn you into him. Speak the truth, and let the truth do the damage." I nodded slowly. "I can do that." In the weeks leading up to the reunion, I kept up appearances. I called Daniel once or twice, just to throw him off. Acted normal, casual. "You coming to the reunion?" he asked during one call. "Of course," I said evenly. "Wouldn't miss it." He chuckled. "Good. Family needs to stick together these days." The irony nearly made me choke. But I smiled into the phone, masking the fire in my chest. Every night, I rehearsed my words. Not too long, not too short, direct, cutting, unmistakable. I imagined his face when I pulled out the folder. The stammering, the excuses, the mask finally slipping. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to shout. I was going to be calm, collected, undeniable. Because hot revenge doesn't always mean screaming. Sometimes it means letting the truth thunder loud enough on its own. 2 nights before the reunion, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, folder in my lap, staring at the papers again. Every signature, every stamp, every word was a betrayal. But instead of breaking me, they strengthened me. Daniel thought he'd buried me under silence. He thought I'd fade quietly into the background, too sentimental, too soft to fight back. But he'd forgotten something important. When you steal from a man's wallet, he'll be angry. But when you steal from his memories, from his parents' legacy, from the core of his identity, you don't just get anger. You get fire. And I was ready to burn his lies down in front of the entire family. The morning of the reunion felt heavier than any morning I could remember. My stomach churned as I shaved, dressed, and slid the thick folder of papers into my bag. Every page inside it pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, certain, undeniable. On the drive over, I rehearsed my words. Not too much, just enough. I didn't want to sound rehearsed. I wanted to sound true. Because truth, when spoken clearly, doesn't need polish. The park pavilion was already buzzing when I arrived. Kids ran in circles with frisbees, uncles shouted greetings, aunts laid out casserole dishes on long tables covered in paper cloths. The air smelled of grilled burgers and charcoal, thick with the hum of family chatter. I plastered a smile on my face and wove through the crowd. Hugged cousins, shook hands, listened to old jokes that weren't funny the first dozen times. All the while, my bag felt like it weighed 50 pounds at my side. And then I saw him, Daniel. He was at the grill, beer in hand, laughing with 2 of our cousins like he didn't have a care in the world. He spotted me across the pavilion, raised his bottle, and called out, "Tom, there you are." His grin was wide, easy, too easy. I walked over, heart pounding. "Hey," I said evenly. He clapped me on the back. "Glad you made it. Big turnout this year, huh? Mom and Dad would be proud." The words nearly made me choke. Proud. If they could see him now, pocketing their legacy, grinning through lies, pride would be the last thing they'd feel. But I kept my face calm. "Yeah, they like this." He nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the grill. To anyone watching, we looked like two brothers catching up, sharing the moment. No one would have guessed the truth simmering beneath my skin. Throughout the afternoon, I kept my mask on. I chatted with aunts, played cards with cousins, even tossed a football with the younger kids. But every time I glanced at Daniel, the knot in my stomach tightened. He was everywhere, shaking hands, making jokes, playing the part of the responsible older brother who carried on the family traditions. He made a toast with one uncle about the importance of sticking together. He reminisced with cousins about Mom's famous pies. And everyone bought it. That was the worst part. Watching them nod, laugh, smile at him like he was some pillar of the family. Watching him bask in the role he had stolen just as surely as he had stolen the house. But patience, I reminded myself. The louder he built his image, the harder the fall would be. At one point, my cousin Linda pulled me aside. "You okay, Tom? You've been quiet today." I forced a smile, just taking it all in. She studied me for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, it's good to see you here. Daniel said you've been really busy lately. Glad you made time." I clenched my jaw. Daniel had been spreading stories too, shaping the narrative before I even walked in. That only made me more certain of what I had to do. As the afternoon waned, the moment I'd been waiting for came. Daniel stood near the head table, raised his beer bottle, and clinked it against the edge. "Can I have everyone's attention?" he called out, smiling wide. The chatter died down. Kids quieted, uncles turned, aunts leaned in. He cleared his throat. "I just want to say how good it feels to have everyone together. Mom and Dad would be smiling right now, seeing us carry on their tradition. Family is what matters most. Sticking together, supporting each other." Applause rippled through the crowd. People nodded, clapped his shoulder, smiled warmly. My chest burned. There he was, standing tall, preaching about family unity while the ink from his betrayal still stained the county records. Enough. I rose to my feet. "That's a nice speech, Daniel," I said, my voice carrying across the pavilion. "But maybe you should tell them what you really did for the family this year." Heads turned. Murmurs spread. Daniel's smile faltered just slightly. "What are you talking about, Tom?" he asked lightly, though I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. The weight in my hand steadied me. "You want to talk about family?" I said, my voice growing louder, sharper. "Then let's talk about the house. Mom and Dad's house. The one they left to both of us. The one you promised we'd keep together. You sold it. Behind my back. Without a word." Gasps rippled through the family. A murmur spread like wildfire. "What? No, that can't be true." Daniel's face turned red. "That's not." I snapped the folder open, slamming the deed onto the table. "It is true. Here's the deed transfer. Here's your signature. Here are the tax records. Here's the realtor's statement saying you told her I'd agreed when I hadn't." I looked around at the stunned faces of our family. He didn't just steal from me. He stole from all of you. From every memory in that house. From every holiday, every dinner, every story we shared inside those walls. He sold our parents' legacy for cash. The pavilion fell silent, except for the sound of Daniel's breathing. Shallow, shaky, panicked. And in that silence, I felt the fire in my chest finally cool. Because now the stage was set. The truth was out. And Daniel's mask had only seconds left before it shattered completely. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the flutter of the papers I'd spread across the table, caught by the afternoon breeze. Deed transfers, signatures, official seals, all lay bare for every I'd see. Daniel stood frozen, his smile gone, his face blotched red. His beer bottle trembled in his hand. "That's not," he started, but his voice cracked. I cut him off. Don't you dare stand here in front of everyone, pretending you care about family, when you sold the heart of this family out from under us." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. My Aunt Marie, who had spent half her life in that kitchen cooking beside Mom, shook her head in disbelief. "Daniel, tell me it isn't true." My cousin Mark leaned forward, squinting at the papers. His signature's right there. Daniel raised his hands, his voice desperate now. "You don't understand. The place was falling apart. It was a money pit. I did it for all of us. For all of us." I thundered. "Did any of us see a cent? Did you tell anyone what you were doing? Or did you just pocket the cash and hope no one noticed?" His lips parted, but no words came out. His silence spoke louder than any excuse ever could. The family erupted. "How could you?" Aunt Marie demanded, tears in her eyes. "That was our home," shouted Uncle Rick. Cousins whispered furiously, shaking their heads, glancing at me with sympathy and at him with disgust. Daniel tried to salvage it, his voice rising above the noise. "I had debts, bills, kids in college. What was I supposed to do?" I stepped closer, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You were supposed to honor Mom and Dad's wishes. You were supposed to keep your word. You were supposed to be a brother." The silence that followed was crushing. He couldn't meet my eyes. For years, Daniel had worn the mask of the responsible son, the dependable brother. He'd fooled them all. But now, standing red-faced in front of the family that once admired him, the mask shattered. Every lie, every excuse, every ounce of arrogance burned away under the weight of the truth. And for the first time, he looked small, trapped, exposed. I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the folder. My hands were steady now, my heart no longer racing. The fire in me had cooled into something cleaner. I looked at the family, their faces etched with betrayal, disappointment, grief. "This is who he is," I said quietly. "The house is gone. We can't get it back, but at least we can see the truth for what it is." I turned to Daniel one last time. "You didn't just sell a house. You sold our history. You sold our parents' memory. And for what? A quick payout? You'll burn through the money, but this shame will last the rest of your life." He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His cousins wouldn't meet his eyes. His uncles turned away. Even his own wife stood with her arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. Daniel was alone, and I walked back to my seat, leaving him there, stripped of everything he thought he'd protected. The reunion stumbled on after that, but the air was different. Conversations were hushed. People avoided Daniel, whispering when he passed. Some left early, too upset to stay. But me? For the first time since I learned the truth, I felt peace. Because betrayal hurts. It rips something out of you that can't ever fully heal. But exposing it, shining light on the lies, refusing to let silence cover them, that give you back a piece of yourself. Daniel had taken a house, but he couldn't take my voice. He couldn't take the truth. And now, the truth would follow him like a shadow he could never outrun. As I drove home that night, the sun setting over the fields, I thought about my parents. About Mom's laugh, Dad's steady hands, the countless meals and arguments and holidays within those walls. The house was gone, but their legacy wasn't wood and nails. It was in me. It was in the family who now saw Daniel for what he truly was. And in a strange way, I realized I had honored them after all. Because I hadn't stayed silent. Because I had chosen truth. And if you've stayed with me through this whole story, thank you. You're the reason I share these tales. Because betrayal isn't rare. But neither is justice if you're brave enough to face it. Please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that silence only protects the guilty. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your sibling sold your parents' house behind your back? As for me, I already gave Daniel my answer. Not in whispers, but in front of everyone.